Hey, it's Hunt. You found Hunt on Saints. We're talking black and gold football. Do us a favor. Hit the like button, share your comments below, and hit that subscription button so you can get all of our content. Enjoy. But I want to talk some Saints. Saints were out on the field for mandatory minicamp today, and we'll get an update on what went on from Sharif Ishaq coming up in an hour. Dennis Allen met with the media as well, had a couple of news and notes to share. But for the purpose of this discussion, we won't talk about today's mandatory minicamp. There are just some interesting numbers that I saw in a piece over on ESPN.com that I was reading through, and it had to do with trends in the NFL on offense. And we all know the Saints are kind of battling to catch up with the rest of the league on offense. They attempted, I believe, in good faith and made a reasonable decision in trying to keep the band together when Sean Payton and Drew Brees moved on, trying to keep Pete Carmichael right there in that chair, trying to go with Jameis Winston, who had been there, understanding you still had Michael Thomas, you still had Alvin Kamara. You had a lot of the pieces that made a great offense go, and you just tried to fill in for the most important pieces of that offense, and it didn't work. Not shocking, but also not unreasonable to expect that you could continue it. But we all saw the Saints offense last year and understand that it was not up to standard in the NFL. They did not run the ball well enough. They weren't efficient enough in the passing game. They were atrocious in the red zone for 3 months. It was just bad. And we also know that the NFL is a massive copycat league. Somebody finds something that seems to work. Everybody tries to pick off that tree, try to figure out how they're going to do it, and then try to implement that. And you understand that when the Saints go to San Francisco and hire Klint Kubiak from that tree that's produced so many good offenses around the NFL, that they're attempting to do the same thing. And this piece from ESPN.com put some interesting numbers to some of that. So I'll kind of go through it briefly. In 2023, so last season, 62% of all the plays in the NFL were run out of 11 personnel. It means one running back, one tight end, 3 wide receivers. That's 62% of the plays were run by that. But none of the 4 conference finalists ranked higher than 20th in the NFL on plays run out of that formation. The Chiefs and Lions were mainly in 12 personnel. That's 1 running back and 2 tight ends. And the Ravens and the 49ers, which is important for our discussion, were in 21 personnel with 2 running backs and 1 tight end at a much higher rate than most of the league, 36%. For San Francisco. 2 running backs and 1 tight end. Now, I would suggest that the Saints might have the personnel to run that. Alvin Kamara seems to factor in. And then what is Kendre Miller? What's Jamal Williams? We don't know from last year. Williams was kind of a bust, and Kendre Miller was hurt the whole time. But they certainly have 2 guys that they could put back there. And then at tight end, Balshamoro, Juwan Johnson, maybe. You certainly don't have George Kittle. And you don't have Christian McCaffrey, and you don't have Deebo Samuel. So I don't know if Klint Kubiak can come right out of San Francisco and work with this personnel immediately, but the one piece I didn't mention there was Taysom Hill, and maybe he factors in at some point in this situation as well. But the 49ers spent a lot of time, far more than the rest of the league, in 21 personnel with 2 running backs and 1 tight end on the field. Now, all 4 of the conference finalists had top 10 offenses in terms of yards per game last year. You've got to score to be one of the best teams in this league. It's great to have a great defense, and you need to have a great defense if you're going to win a championship, but the common thread here with all these teams is that they really could go score. Now, last year, San Francisco, this is the most interesting piece to me, and I think the most recognizable change you're going to see in the Saints offense. Last year, San Francisco used pre-snap motion on 79% of its offensive plays. That was second to the Dolphins with Mike McDaniel, who worked with Kyle Shanahan. So those 2 were right about at 80% in terms of pre-snap motions. That led the league. We know, based on a lot of the research that was done early on, the Saints were as stagnant a pre-snap offense as there was in the NFL last year. That is going to change in a big way. I don't know if they can replicate what the 49ers did with, Christian McCaffrey and Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk and George Kittle. I don't know if the Saints have the personnel to do that. I know for a fact the Saints have the personnel to move before the ball is snapped. They can do that, I promise. And I expect to see a ton more of that when the season starts. San Francisco's offense led the NFL with a success rate of 50% on plays that involved pre-snap motions. The other three conference finalists weren't far behind. Kansas City, 63.9%, Detroit, 69.4%. They were 7th and 4th, respectively, in pre-snap motions. The Saints have got to use that moving forward. It tips the defensive hand at some points. It gives the quarterback information. It makes the defense move and communicate. And to sit there and be stagnant like the Saints were much of the year last year is completely unacceptable in this era of the NFL. I expect that to change in a big way. And here's kind of the last piece to this that I'm trying to relate from San Francisco to New Orleans with Klint Kubiak. These four teams that finished in the conference championship or the Super Bowl had four of the top tight ends in the NFL anchoring their offenses. You understand who those were. You're all pretty much aware of Travis Kelce. Think he got a pretty good handle for George Kittle. Mark Andrews with the Ravens. And then, of course, the emergence in Detroit of their tight end, whose name is completely skipping me, and I'm going to get to it here in a second. Young guy, just can't come up with it. Either way, Beck, if you can think of the Lions' new tight end who did a great job last year, I'd be happy to hear it. But either way, they all use the tight end a ton. And I'm not sure what the Saints are going to get out of their tight end situation this year. Your skill sets are interesting. No one has anyone quite like Taysom Hill. So how am I supposed to compare that to the rest of the league? I don't know. Juwan Johnson is not the prototype at tight end. He's not 6'6". He's not built like a truck. He was a college wide receiver who's put on a little bit of weight. And then Foster Moreau is not exactly a dynamic playmaking threat. And that was maybe a reason the Saints could have taken a look in the first round at Brock Bowers, because that changes that equation real quick. Now, Bowers didn't get to him, and we know that, but that was a reasonable thought when we were like, what if the Saints don't pick an offensive lineman in the first round? Like, maybe they don't. And if they don't, what could they do? And Brock Bowers would have made some sense. Of course, they did not take him. He wasn't available. They took an offensive lineman, and none of this stuff is going to matter if the Saints can't do a better job at the point of attack in pass protection and in run blocking. But I think we probably correlate exactly what San Francisco did to what New Orleans is going to look like a little bit too much. You have a completely different roster and different coaching staffs, just one guy that you've brought over. So it's not going to be a carbon copy, even though we like to think that because the 49ers have been so good. But there are some things that you can do and implement that don't take talent. Formations don't take talent. Motioning doesn't take talent. You just do it. The playmaking part is where the Saints may have some catching up to do. But I feel pretty good about Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed. And then we'll see what happens at running back and then how they use the tight ends. But you're going to see more motion, and I think you're going to see a little bit more diversity in terms of the way that the Saints line up. Last year was completely unacceptable. None of y'all run here as quickly as you can to get my take on X's and O's. But this is simple stuff. We're not talking about whether you need to run counter, you need to run power. We're not talking about pulling guards, zone blocking schemes, gap schemes. Like, that's not what we're getting into here. This is simple stuff, and the Saints have got to do a better job of that, and I believe they will. I haven't been glowing in my remarks about the Saints in the offseason, but some of this stuff is fixable, and I think they're on their way to doing so with the hire that they made in Klint Kubiak. So, Sam Laporta, there's the Lions tight end. That's just an interesting piece that I saw up on ESPN.com. Copycat League, I think the Saints very much in copycat mode when it comes to what San Francisco was trying to do over the last few years on offense. Hey, it's on. Thanks for watching Hunt on Saints. Before you leave, help us out a little bit. Hit that like button, leave your comments in the section below, and hit that subscribe button so you get all our content right here from Hunt on Saints. We'll see you next time.